Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. Today we have a showdown between two integrated bracelet steel sports watches versus starts now. This is IWC versus Chopard. On the left we have the Alpine Eagle Pine Green, and on the right we have the IWC Ingenieur Automatic 40. Now these two watches, both launched for the 2023 model year, have deep roots dating back minimally to the early 1980s in the case of the Chopard and 1976 in the case of the IWC. So let's take a look at this unconventional Chopard first. It is a special edition launched in late 2022 for the 23 model year. Now, while not expressly a limited edition, you can see it features the image of an eagle flying over the Alps with a pine green dial. The purpose here, a charity benefit piece for the Alpine Eagle Foundation, literally eagles in the Alps. So it's a conservation theme, hence the green pine-inspired dial. Now the watch is 41 millimeters in diameter, 9.8 millimeters thick, and 47.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip. Though if we do include this outer link on each side, you can see how it's rigid. I can't compress it any more than that. So the total distance across the wrist is actually 54 millimeters. Now in the hand, it feels substantial. The bracelet also feels fairly thin and supple. It is an impressive watch in many regards, and the clasp is a thick gauge double deploying steel, but it is friction fit, meaning there are no triggers to hold it fast. The most violent possible action of the wrist could theoretically throw it open. So I'm just going to throw that out there because the Ingenieur does have a trigger system. On the wrist, and my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, the watch wears well. It feels every millimeter it's 41. And like a lot of watches in its class, it feels like it might even be a size or two larger than it is. So 41, maybe 42 in terms of how it fits. My wrist accommodates it beautifully, but I would say 15 centimeters circumference and up if you want to get along with this watch. That should be your wrist size. It is flat though, and it'll easily slide underneath a cuff. The watch is made of what they call Lucent steel. It's beautifully detailed. It's got an in-house caliper. And I think it's worth running through the advantages of this watch relative to the IWC. So now that we've been through the basic dimensions, let's talk specs a little bit. Caliber 0101C, it's on the inside. It is a manufacturer movement under a display case back. The IWC does not have a display case back, and it does not have a manufacturer movement. This is also a chronometer-certified caliber, and while it isn't ultra haute de gamme in its finish like some Chopard Louis Ulysse Chopard movements, it is Chopard's own, properly sized for the case back and handsomely decorated if by machine technique. So you could see that there's fluting on the rotor, you could see that there's snailing on the bridges, solarization on the edge of the mass. We have a machined but handsome and attractive bevel. We have engine turning on the base plate. We have polished screws, 60-hour power reserve, 4 hertz beat rate, 5-position adjusted COSC chronometer, of course, hacking seconds, and a quick set date. And this watch, which has a screw down crown, is 100 meters water resistant. We'll do a quick lume shot so you can see the watch. Easy to see in the dark. Note that we have double indices at each hour. Okay, so taking a look at the advantages here, obviously the display case back, obviously the chronometer certification, obviously the manufacturer movement. The design dates back to the original Carl Friedrich Schäufele designed St. Moritz of the 1980 model year. That's the watch that inspires this design. And the finishing of this one is exquisite, with a level of detail and refinement that you will not find on the IWC. Quite simply, it is a more complex and time-consuming execution. It looks and feels more luxurious. You can also see how the bracelet features a number of interlinks. The intermediate links not actually visible from the top, but visible in profile. As a result, this bracelet is incredibly solid, not just better finished and more attractive, but it has some of the slightest side-to-side play I've ever encountered in a bracelet, and it is deeply appealing both from a sensual standpoint and aesthetically. Take another look here, Lucent steel. Now, normal stainless is between 155 and 175 Vickers. This is more like 220 to 230 Vickers, so it is harder to scratch than the steel, which is 316 on the IWC. What else can I recommend? Well, let's take a quick look at the thinner case profile. Now, it's not the easiest thing to see, but it's a little bit more than a millimeter, and I think these type of things do register from a tactile standpoint. You can really feel that the Chopard is the thinner and more refined watch over the IWC, which is thicker in spite of having a solid caseback. Usually a display caseback makes for a thicker watch, but in this instance, even a display caseback cannot give the IWC a thinness advantage over the Chopard. So lots to love right here. And also this movement, in addition to being manufacturer visible and chronometer certified, even though it's only a 60-hour power reserve, it is not shared with a sub $4,000 watch, whereas the movement in this is in fact shared with a sub $4,000 Baume & Mercier. This is a Valfleurier caliber, and this is Chopard's own. Now let's take a quick look at the IWC Ingenieur Automatic 40. This is the reference 3289-03. Now this was reintroduced in 2023, but the fact is this Gerald Genta design, integrated bracelet case and lug profile, this goes back to 1976 and the reference 1832 Ingenieur SL, which along with the Royal Oak, the Rolex 5100, and the Nautilus was one of the great Gerald Genta designs of the 1970s era that helped to define that era. Incredibly and incomprehensibly, IWC stepped away from this design to go with something that looked more like a 50s or 60s Ingenieur from about 2016 to 2022. Fortunately, righting the wrong, IWC brought back this iconic Ingenieur design, and it is now 40 millimeters in diameter in 316L stainless steel, 10.9 millimeters thick, and if we're going to measure it from end link to end link, the total distance across the wrist here is 49.7 millimeters. Now, here's where we stand in terms of fit and feel. I'm going to throw this on my wrist, and I'll say this, even though it's thicker, it wears a little bit smaller. It doesn't feel as large on the wrist. It's a good looking watch, and though it is thicker, it is not thick, and it does have a stepped case flank and a sloped bezel. Both of these watches will slide underneath dress cuffs. It feels robust, and while the movement inside is long-legged but not terribly sophisticated, the finish, the feel, the external presentation, and the sensual qualities of the watch give the impression of a much more expensive timepiece than it is. It holds its own against the Chopard despite the price deficit. So I would recommend this watch for a wrist of 14 centimeters circumference or larger. Let's do a quick loom shot here. Take a look. All right. I'm going to let you guys decide which of these watches is better loomed. Is it the IWC or is it the Chopard? I'm not actually sure. I'm going to call this one a tie. It seems that the IWC has less luminescence about the indices, but the hands are broader and easier to see, whereas the Chopard has thinner loom strips on the hands, but we've got indices, we've got numerals, we've got luminescent markers outboard of those. I think there's more on the dial on the Chopard, and there's more on the hands on the IWC. So let's review the advantages now of the IWC. First, a big one, price. This watch sells new for $11,700, whereas this watch sells new, as you see it here with the green dial, for $16,200. Now this watch right here sells used for $10,500 to about $10,900, whereas this watch right here sells used for $13,000 to $14,000. So advantage IWC. Also important to note, this watch does have a 5-day power reserve. While the movement was designed by Valfleurier, which is a Richemont Group company that builds movements for watchmakers within the group, nevertheless, 120 hours is twice what you get in the Chopard, so big advantage on IWC's part. Also, in terms of warranty, this comes with an 8-year warranty that beats the Chopard by many years, so advantage IWC on a warranty front. It wears a bit smaller, it fits a bit better on a smaller wrist, so from an ergonomic standpoint, unless thin profile is your only priority, the IWC does wear smaller and easier. This is a Gerald Genta original, this design. It is not a derivative, which watches like the Girard Perregaux Laureato, the Vacheron 222, and the Saint Moritz were in their day. And this, of course, is derived from a derivation, whereas this is the real thing. Gerald Genta design living in the flesh. Magnetic resistance. It has a soft iron inner cage, part of the reason it has a solid case back that wraps all the way around the movement and endows it with 80,000 ampere per meter or 1000 Gauss anti-magnetism, whereas this is more like 4,800 ampere per meter. It uses a standard modern hairspring, but it does not have any specific protection, nor does it have any movement silicon that would reduce its susceptibility to a magnetic field. And then here with the clasp, it is a very generic piece. As you can see, it says BRO Brogioli. That's the supplier that made the clasp. But look at this. It has twin triggers, so once it's closed, it actually cannot just pop open due to inertia or violence. You do have to press both of the triggers to open it up, and I find that has a lot of value from a security standpoint, and that really recommends the clasp to me. If these are sports watches, this one's just a little bit sportier. It also has another and sportier still feature, a little bit like IWC Pilot's watches. The sapphire and the seals are secured against accidental explosive displacement in the event that your aircraft cabin loses pressure. So I guess every little bit counts. So which one do I like better? Well, there's no doubt right here that this has greater detail refinement inside and outside. This looks and feels like a more expensive product. Or at least it does when my eyes are open, because in the hand, I have to admit that this IWC does feel very expensive, and a lot of that seems to come down to the solidity of its bracelet. Taking a look in profile, you can see that every single link of this bracelet is removable, which makes it a bit more sizable and friendly to an idiosyncratic wrist circumference. But somehow, despite the relative simplicity of this Brogioli-built bracelet, it feels as expensive. So I'm going to say at the end of the day, I know this is a more sophisticated watch, but this one, eyes closed, feels just as sophisticated. This is a proudly manufactured caliber, a chronometer, and it's more scratch tolerant. I like all of those features, but at the end of the day, I'm sort of in love here with the feel of the bracelet, the fit of the watch, the aqua green dial, the anti-magnetism, and the super long power reserve. It's also not bad that you get a little bit of a discount when you buy this new or used. So I can't fault anyone for choosing either of these watches, but at the end of the day, for me, it is actually going to be the IWC, and I've been critical of the Baume & Mercier grade movement in a 5-figure watch, but ultimately we buy them for the way they fit, feel, and look, and I just think this one aced it. So let me know in the description below, which one do you consider to be the winner of this showdown? I'm curious to know. It's really going to come down to your personal priorities, but for me, it is this IWC.